One should not underestimate the power of greed. There are many things in this world that give power and status, but money is the strongest deciding factor in all regards. You can overcome, or possibly even enforce, power, or even discrimination, if you have enough wealth. For after all, what powers nations? A wise man once said that an army marches on its stomach, and that is very true. To have any form of power, you need an army. To have an army, you need resources to power them. To get resources, you need access to land. And to have all of these, you need power. And true power comes from money, the ultimate revealer of innate corruption. One small nation has complete understanding of this concept and manipulates it to its fullest. The mercantile city-state of Sargild is a bizarre rule-breaker that uses the power of wealth to very much influence the world at large. They stand out in many ways and shape world events, despite being little more than one city. For all accounts, they should be nothing more than a little footnote in history, but are instead a powerhouse on the entire continent. They deny all the rules and stand out all the more for it. They are one of the only places conquered by the Scald during the Age of Madness to become independent peacefully, via a transaction that almost certainly involved money changing hands. While officially they are an ally to the Scald, in reality they act more like a vassal, serving their overlord and paying tribute as part of their overall income, go straight to the Scald. Something that the Sargild are actually fine with, as hiring mercenaries isn't exactly cheap, so having the Scald protect your lands for a measly part of your income is more than worth it as they see it. And the Scald are more than happy, as Sargild money is far more valuable than most. See, most nations use iron coins as their currency, as their wealth is direct, but in an emergency that can be melted down and made into arms or armor. But the Sargild do not use iron coins, they instead use gold coins, as they own one of the largest gold mines on the continent and are one of the only nations that can freely have access to these minerals in order to use them as currency. They have large trading convoys, with the largest type of docile dragon carrying huge amounts of gold and even some gemstones that are being traded from place to place. In fact, most raiding cultures like the Alantir and the Orguni know to seek out Sargild convoys specifically, because of their immense wealth in comparison to everything else, and as most of the wealthier ones have access to dragons, taking them out's not going to be that much of an issue. And to say that they have an uneasy alliance with the Scald would be a bit of an understatement. The Scald only lets them have some form of freedom because of their immense wealth, and the Sargild immediately abuses said freedoms to trade with all of the Scald enemies, including the ones that sometimes raid them, as being the top of market trades is far more important than keeping slights against you. If you were to take revenge, you wouldn't be the best business partner now, would you? Their culture is truly surrounded by trade, if that is not yet obvious. Being merchants and masters of coin and barter is considered a virtue in their society. See, their society is run by a collection of merchant lord families that serve a sort of oligarchy where wealth and coin run the city. It results in family patriarchs or matriarchs running the city in a council, where older men and women decide the rulings of day-to-day life purely because they were born into the wealthiest families. And of course, family feuds shape the majority of politics in these lands. And as there's only one head of council at a time, they might spend a ridiculous amount of their money and effort screwing over a rival in a petty display to prove that their family is just so much more elegant. I'm going to let my nobility show for just a second, but if you were, for whatever reason, given the opportunity to attend a party or a ball in Sargild, I would highly recommend you do so. They are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, events and occasions. There are entire festivals for the whole family, dances for the more elegant types, and fancy masquerades for the more, shall I say, adult audiences. All of which I highly recommend from personal experiences, as they pride themselves on the culture of these festivals. After all, what's the point of wealth if you can't flaunt it to those around you? and of course inviting all other nobilities from all nations, especially the ones that do not like each other, as what's dinner without a bit of entertainment? Events like this has led to their decadent reputation, and it is very well earned. They make the western Vard of Skeld seem hard-working in comparison, but they did earn the small bit of land they'd hold on to. Well, their mercenaries did, but that's technically the same thing as they see it. Well, actually they weren't mercenaries at the time, they were just green-armoured marauders, but now they're their mercenaries, so I suppose they recruited them in a way. See, there's a lot of factions in this world that are very willing to swap sides for coin, and most by now are aware of the Sargild's reputation. So many have turned sides and dropped their banners to take up the green city-state banners. And the Sargild are more than welcoming, as soldiers are always needed, especially for those of a smaller population. They don't own much land other than their main city, which is bizarrely called Sargild, the surrounding islands, and the Sargildian Creek, which they actually rent out to many a training wingard, as it's a very harsh land with jagged rocks that have many holes in them that are perfect for training your new dragon. In fact, all of the few lands that they own have some form of value to them, and I suspect they would not expand any more so unless it is a self-sustaining expansion. They only go after or buy lands that is of extreme value. Quality over quantity in this regard. In fact, some of their more local and biggest problems affect them exclusively because of this, such as a particular clade of blood chasers that live within their lands and are a constant problem. See, most of the wealthy merchants live on cliffside mansions, which are the perfect habitats for blood chasers, and this region is home to the Sargildian Squall, who constantly nest in said nobles' manors. But this is something they just have to put up with half the time, as were it not for this clade, their shipments of goods and transport routes via the sea would be destroyed by large sea monsters. This clade views those said monsters as its favourite snack. So, indirectly, they deal with their actual biggest problem. So, they're needed in this regard. And it also helps that the clade almost perfectly matches the city's colours, to the point where most think the colours were picked after the clade. But the merchants figured out how to use this to their advantage in the end. See, there is a group of marauders in green armour that most know as the Tamers, and they used to have their main base within the Korovian jungle. But due to a very generous donation to the Sargildian Defence Fund, they moved to a place much closer to the city. This resulted in the marauders naturally wanting to train this clade, as the merchants planned all along. Some of them even then bought them off the marauders, for all sorts of reasons. Mostly status, as a lot of cultures pride themselves on their dragons, and showing up to an event with a blood chaser behind you is quite the flex, I must say. But this did actually bite them in the arse in the long run. See, the Tamers are known to have a lot of experimenting when it comes to teaching and taming dragons. One of these clades is known as the Achial Snowdrifters, and they were bred to be a tamer dragon species, one of the first blood chasers that you could comfortably live with. Unfortunately, they failed in this regard, and it backfired heavily. See, as part of their training, the marauders lowered their pride, but not their want for hunting. Then, inevitably, when some of them got out and became wild again, this resulted in the clade viewing humans as equals to them, meaning that they were more than worthy to be hunted. This resulted in members of this clade constantly hunting humans whenever they find them in the wild, and I think you can see why that's a bit of a problem, especially when they are right next to a major city. They had to compensate a lot of Skaldian families for this endeavour, as well as families within their own lands, but overall I'm sure they made far much more money than they lost, as having a small army of dragoneers at your beck and call is always a money maker. And money is what makes a nation. So we will have to see what the future has in store for Sargild. Perhaps they will expand again, even more so, to the more rural lands westward, or perhaps they will ever remain a small footnote in the history books. But then again, they might prefer it that way, to be the masters of wealth that are overlooked by most. Perhaps that is their plan, to survive, to have a lot of power, but to lay quite low. But it seems I am now out of coin, which means I'm now out of drinks, and in turn means the end of my story. For now, at least. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller. Have a good day.